Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. I never imagined my life's work would crumble from within. As the owner of the Bay of Happiness, a quaint yet renowned seaside restaurant, I dedicated my life to bringing joy through culinary excellence. The restaurant wasn't just a business, it was my passion, my pride. And Daniel, my head chef, was an essential part of it, or so I thought. Daniel and I had shared countless hours creating exquisite dishes that drew food lovers from miles around. At 45, I'd seen enough to trust my instincts, and Daniel's talent seemed unquestionable. Yet, the whisper of doubt crept in as I noticed subtle changes in the restaurant's performance. The once bustling dining room was now sporadically filled, and the reviews hinted at declining quality. One evening, after another dishearteningly slow night, I decided to stay late, combing through financial records and customer feedback. The numbers painted a grim picture, and the reviews stung like 1,000 tiny needles. Determined to find the root of the problem, I began scrutinizing the kitchen's operations more closely. It was during one of these late nights that I overheard a heated argument between Daniel and another staff member. "Just stick to the plan," Daniel hissed. "Once we're out of here, this place will be a sinking ship, and I'll be at the new spot with a fresh start." The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. Daniel was sabotaging the Bay of Happiness to secure a position at a rival restaurant. The next morning, I confronted Daniel in the kitchen. The clattering of pots and pans ceased as I entered, and the entire staff turned to look at me. I could feel their eyes on me, a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Daniel, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. Daniel looked up from his station, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "Can it wait, Mervyn? We're in the middle of prep." "No, it can't," I replied firmly. "Follow me." We stepped into my office, a small cluttered room off the main kitchen. The walls were adorned with awards and photographs from better days, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. I closed the door behind us, turning to face Daniel. "I overheard your conversation last night," I began, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and betrayal. "How could you do this to me, to the restaurant?" Daniel's expression shifted to one of defiance. "It's just business, Mervyn. You should understand that." I felt a surge of rage. "Just business? This restaurant is my life, Daniel. I trusted you, and you betrayed that trust." Daniel shrugged, a nonchalant expression on his face. "I needed a way out. The offer from Le Jardin is too good to pass up. Besides, this place is going downhill anyway." The words stung, but I refused to let him see how deeply they hurt. "You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your things and get out." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret in Daniel's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by indifference. "Fine," he said, turning to leave. "But don't say I didn't warn you. This place is a sinking ship." As Daniel walked out, I felt a crushing weight settle on my shoulders. The restaurant's reputation was already damaged, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. I spent the next few hours in my office, poring over financial records and customer feedback, trying to devise a plan to save the Bay of Happiness. But the more I looked, the clearer it became that the damage was too extensive. The once glowing reviews had turned into scathing critiques, and our loyal customers had begun to drift away. My heart sank as I realized that closing the restaurant might be the only option left. That night, as I prepared to lock up for what could be the last time, I took a final walk through the empty dining room. The tables were set with the finest linens and polished silverware, a stark reminder of the restaurant's former glory. I paused by a window, looking out at the darkened bay, the sound of the waves a melancholy backdrop to my thoughts. As I made my way to the back alley, intending to secure the dumpsters, I noticed a movement in the shadows. Cautiously, I approached and found a woman and a young girl huddled there, clearly in distress. The woman, Barbara, quickly apologized, explaining that she and her daughter, Lisbeth, had been using the alley as a makeshift shelter. They'd relied on food scraps from the restaurant, but now they had nowhere else to go. My heart ached for them. In their plight, I saw a reflection of my own struggles. Without thinking, I made a decision. "Stay," I said gently. "You can help me clean up this place in exchange for food and shelter." Barbara's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious? We don't want to impose." I insist, I replied, my voice firm but kind. You and Lisbeth deserve a safe place to stay, and I could use the help. Barbara hesitated but then nodded slowly, a tentative smile spreading across her face. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. The first morning after our encounter, I walked into the dining room to find Barbara and Lisbeth already at work. Barbara was meticulously scrubbing the floors, while Lisbeth, her tiny hands clasping a rag, polished the silverware. The sight was both heartwarming and heart-wrenching. Good morning, I greeted, setting my briefcase down on a nearby table. You're both up early. Barbara looked up, a soft smile on her face. We wanted to get a head start. There's a lot to be done. I nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude. Thank you. Your help means a lot to me. Over the next few days, we developed a routine. I would handle the administrative work, trying to salvage whatever I could of the restaurant's finances and reputation, while Barbara and Lisbeth focused on cleaning and organizing the space. It was during these early morning hours and late-night sessions that I began to learn more about them. One afternoon, as we took a break from our tasks, Barbara and I sat at one of the freshly polished tables, sipping on cups of tea. So how did you end up here? I asked, trying to keep my tone gentle. Barbara sighed, looking down at her cup. It's a long story. My ex-husband, Arnold, left us with nothing. We lost our home, and I've been struggling to find steady work ever since. Lisbeth, who was drawing at another table, looked up and chimed in. But Mommy's a great cook. She used to make the best dinners. Barbara smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. I did what I could, but it's been tough. An idea began to form in my mind, but I pushed it aside for the moment. I'm sorry to hear that. You're both incredibly strong. Barbara looked at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mervyn. Your kindness has given us hope. As the days turned into weeks, our bond grew stronger. Barbara's attention to detail was remarkable, and Lisbeth's infectious energy brought a sense of joy back to the restaurant. It wasn't long before the dining room sparkled with a renewed sense of purpose. One evening, after a particularly long day of cleaning, Barbara offered to cook dinner. I accepted, curious to taste her cooking. As she moved through the kitchen, her movements were fluid and confident, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had plagued her when we first met. The aroma of the food filled the air, reminding me of better days. We sat down to a simple yet delicious meal, the flavors dancing on my palate. This is incredible, I said, savoring each bite. You're truly talented, Barbara. She blushed, a shy smile spreading across her face. Thank you. I haven't cooked like this in a long time. I set my fork down, looking at her seriously. Barbara, I've been thinking. Once we get the restaurant back on its feet, how would you feel about becoming the head chef here? Her eyes widened in surprise. Me? A head chef? I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide right now, I reassured her. Just think about it. You have a gift, and I believe we can bring the Bay of Happiness back to life together. Barbara nodded slowly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I'll think about it, Mervyn. Thank you for believing in me. The next day, I began reaching out to potential investors, knowing we needed financial backing to fully restore the restaurant. It was a challenging process, but I refused to give up. Meanwhile, Barbara and Lisbeth continued their work, transforming the Bay of Happiness inch by inch. One afternoon, as I was making calls in my office, I heard a knock on the door. It was Lisbeth, her eyes wide with excitement. Mervyn, come see, she exclaimed, grabbing my hand and pulling me towards the dining room. As we entered, I was greeted by a stunning sight. The once neglected room had been completely revitalized. The tables were set with crisp linens, the silverware gleamed, and the air was filled with a sense of renewed hope. Barbara, this is amazing, I said, turning to her. She smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. We're getting there, Mervyn, step by step. As the days went by, the bond between us grew stronger. One evening, as we shared another meal, I decided to broach a subject that had been on my mind. Barbara, I need to ask you something, I began, setting my fork down. Would you be willing to join me in a meeting with potential investors tomorrow? I think your story, your dedication, could make a difference. Barbara looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and determination. Of course, Mervyn. I'll do whatever it takes to help. The next day, we prepared for the meeting with a sense of nervous anticipation. As the investors arrived, I introduced Barbara, sharing her story and the incredible transformation she had helped achieve. The investors listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to admiration. As the meeting drew to a close, one of the investors, a man named Michael, stood up. "Mervyn, Barbara, I'm impressed. I see potential here, and I'm willing to invest in the Bay of Happiness." A wave of relief washed over me. "Thank you, Michael. You won't regret this." As the investors left, Barbara and I stood in the dining room, a sense of accomplishment and hope filling the space. "We did it," I said, turning to her. Barbara smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Yes, we did. Thank you, Mervyn, for believing in us." In that moment, I knew that our chance encounter had been more than just a stroke of luck. The morning sun filtered through the freshly cleaned windows of the Bay of Happiness, casting a warm glow over the revitalized dining area. The tables were set, the silverware gleamed, and the scent of fresh coffee wafted through the air. It was a new day, and with it came new challenges and new opportunities. Barbara, Lisbeth, and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm, working tirelessly to prepare for the reopening. The promise of investment from Michael and the other investors had given us the financial backing we needed, but there was still much to be done. One crisp autumn morning, I found Barbara in the kitchen, her hands deftly working through a batch of dough. Lisbeth was at her side, mimicking her mother's movements with a look of intense concentration on her face. I couldn't help but smile at the sight. "Morning, Barbara." "Morning, Lisbeth," I greeted, stepping into the kitchen. "Morning, Mervyn," they replied in unison, Barbara's voice warm and welcoming, Lisbeth's filled with youthful exuberance. I watched for a moment, admiring Barbara's skill. "You know, Barbara, I've been thinking, we need to do something special for the reopening. Something that will really draw people in and showcase what you can do." Barbara looked up from her work, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I've been thinking about that too. Maybe a special tasting menu? Something that highlights local ingredients and our unique style." I nodded, impressed. "That sounds perfect. Let's start planning it out." We spent the next few hours brainstorming and discussing ideas, the excitement in the room palpable. Barbara's passion for cooking was infectious, and her creativity seemed boundless. By the end of the session, we had a solid plan for the tasting menu, complete with a selection of innovative dishes that would showcase her culinary talents. As we prepared for the reopening, we encountered numerous challenges. The kitchen needed new equipment, the dining room required a fresh coat of paint, and there were countless other tasks that demanded our attention. But with each hurdle we faced, Barbara's determination and resourcefulness shone through. One afternoon, as we were assembling new kitchen equipment, a delivery truck pulled up to the back entrance. I went to greet the driver, my heart racing with anticipation. The truck contained the final pieces of equipment we needed to fully equip the kitchen. "Hey, Mervyn," the driver called out, handing me a clipboard to sign. "Got your new ovens and refrigerators here. Where do you want them?" I directed the delivery team, and we spent the next few hours installing the equipment. As we worked, Barbara and I exchanged ideas about the final touches we could add to the menu. "Mervyn, what do you think about adding a seasonal soup to the menu?" Barbara suggested, her eyes bright with excitement. "Something warm and comforting as we head into winter." "I love that idea," I replied, smiling. "What kind of soup are you thinking?" "Maybe a roasted butternut squash soup with a hint of sage and a swirl of cream," she said, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "That sounds amazing. Let's do it," I agreed, feeling a renewed sense of optimism. As we continued to work, I couldn't help but notice the way Barbara moved through the kitchen. She was in her element, her confidence growing with each passing day. It was a stark contrast to the time-and woman I had met in the alley just weeks before. One evening, after a particularly long day of preparations, we sat down to a meal together. Barbara had prepared a simple yet delicious dinner, and as we ate, we talked about our hopes and dreams for the future. "You know, Mervyn," Barbara began, her voice soft, "I never imagined I'd have a chance like this again. To cook, to create. It means more to me than you know." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "Barbara, you've given me hope too. You and Lisbeth have brought new life to this place. I'm grateful every day for the chance encounter that brought us together." She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Thank you, Mervyn, for everything." As the reopening day approached, the buzz around the Bay of Happiness grew. Word had spread about the restaurant's revival, and there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. We worked late into the night, ensuring every detail was perfect. The night before the reopening, Barbara and I stood in the dining room, surveying our work. The tables were set, the kitchen was ready, and the menu was finalized. "We did it, Barbara," I said, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. "The Bay of Happiness is ready to shine again." She looked at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "Yes, we did. And tomorrow we'll show everyone what we're capable of." The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the windows, we prepared to open the doors. The staff arrived, excitement and nerves evident on their faces. Barbara took charge in the kitchen, her presence commanding and reassuring. As the first customers began to trickle in, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and excitement. This was the moment we had worked so hard for. "Welcome to the Bay of Happiness." I greeted the first guests with a smile. "We're thrilled to have you here." Throughout the day, the restaurant buzzed with activity. The dining room was filled with the sounds of clinking silverware, laughter, and the hum of conversation. The aroma of Barbara's cooking filled the air, drawing in more and more patrons. At one point, I stepped into the kitchen to check on Barbara. She was in the zone, her movements precise and efficient. Lisbeth, donning a small apron, was helping out, her face beamed with pride. "How's it going in here?" I asked, smiling at the sight. "Busy, but we're managing," Barbara replied, her eyes sparkling. "The feedback has been amazing. People love the food." I nodded, feeling a swell of pride. "You're doing an incredible job, Barbara. I knew you could do it." As the day turned into evening, the restaurant continued to bustle with activity. The tasting menu was a hit, and the atmosphere was electric. Guests lingered, savoring each dish and sharing their delight with us. Towards the end of the night, as the last patrons were leaving, Barbara and I stood together in the dining room, taking it all in. "We did it, Mervyn," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We really did it." I looked at her, my heart full. Yes, we did. The Bay of Happiness was thriving. The once quiet dining room now buzzed with the sounds of laughter, conversation, and clinking glasses. Barbara's exquisite culinary skills had put the restaurant back on the map, and the tasting menu she had crafted was the talk of the town. Yet, amidst the success and celebration, a storm was brewing on the horizon, one that neither Barbara nor I had anticipated. One chilly evening, as the restaurant bustled with the dinner rush, I noticed a man standing near the entrance. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a menacing aura. His eyes scanned the room with a look of disdain until they landed on Barbara, who was busy plating a dish in the open kitchen. His expression shifted to one of anger and entitlement. I walked over, my heart pounding. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He sneered. "Yeah, you can. I'm looking for Barbara." Barbara looked up, her face paling as she recognized the man. She quickly finished plating and walked over to us, her hands trembling slightly. "Arnold, what are you doing here?" Arnold's eyes flashed with anger. "I've come to get what's mine. You think you can just run off and hide? I want my share of the restaurant." The tension in the room was palpable. Barbara stood her ground, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "You have no right to be here, Arnold. You left us with nothing." Arnold took a step closer, his voice lowering to a threatening whisper. "I have every right. You're still my wife, and I'm entitled to half of everything you have." I couldn't stand by any longer. I stepped between them, facing Arnold directly. "You need to leave. Now. This is my restaurant, and you have no business here." Arnold laughed, a cold, harsh sound that sent chills down my spine. "I'm not going anywhere. In fact, I have a proposition for you. Sell me the restaurant, and I'll leave you in peace." The absurdity of his demand made my blood boil. "That's not going to happen," I said firmly. "You need to leave before I call the police." Before Arnold could respond, Michael Carter, one of our key investors, approached us. He had been dining with a group of prominent local business people and had clearly overheard the confrontation. "Is there a problem here?" Michael asked, his tone calm but authoritative. Arnold sneered. "This has nothing to do with you. It's a personal matter." Michael's gaze hardened. "Actually, it does. You're disrupting our business, and that affects my investment. I suggest you leave before things get worse for you." Arnold looked between us. Realizing he was outnumbered, with one last glare at Barbara, he turned and stormed out of the restaurant, slamming the door behind him. The tension in the room slowly dissipated, and the staff and patrons resumed their activities, though the air remained thick with unease. Barbara sighed, her shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you, Mervyn, and thank you, Michael. I didn't know what to do." Michael nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone. We're here to help." As the night wore on, I could see the encounter with Arnold had left Barbara shaken. She tried to put on a brave face, but her usual vivacity was dimmed. I knew we needed to address this, to ensure it didn't cast a shadow over the bright future we were building. The next day, I found Barbara in the kitchen, working on a new dish. I approached her gently, not wanting to startle her. "Barbara, can we talk?" She looked up, her eyes filled with worry. "Of course, Mervyn. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "I'm worried about you. Arnold's appearance last night, it's clearly affecting you. We need to figure out a way to protect you and Lisbeth from him." Barbara's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. "I know. He's always been a bully, but I never thought he'd show up here, in our new life." I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "We'll get through this together, I promise. Let's talk to Michael and the other investors. Maybe they can help us find a legal solution." Barbara squeezed my hand, a flicker of hope returning to her eyes. "Thank you, Mervyn. I don't know what I'd do without you." Later that afternoon, we gathered in the private dining room with Michael and a few other investors. Barbara explained the situation, her voice steady despite the fear I knew she felt. Michael listened intently, then nodded. "We can help. I know a good lawyer who specializes in these kinds of cases. We'll make sure Arnold can't harass you or make any claims on the restaurant." Barbara's relief was palpable. "Thank you, Michael. That means the world to me." The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations and preparations. The lawyer, a sharp and compassionate woman named Rachel, assured us we had a strong case. Barbara filed for a restraining order against Arnold and began the process of finalizing their divorce, which had been left in limbo. Despite the stress of the situation, Barbara's spirit remained unbroken. She threw herself into her work, creating new dishes and perfecting old ones. The restaurant continued to thrive, and the support from our community was overwhelming. One evening, after a particularly busy night, Barbara and I sat down in the empty dining room, enjoying the moment of peace. The soft glow of the candlelight cast a warm light over her face, and I couldn't help but admire her strength and resilience. "You know, Barbara," I began, "I've never met anyone as strong as you. Despite everything, you keep moving forward." She smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I had to be strong for Lisbeth. She's my world, and I want to give her the life she deserves." "You're doing an amazing job," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "And I'm here to support you every step of the way." Barbara squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Mervyn, for everything. I don't know what I'd do without you." The dawn of a new era was upon the Bay of Happiness. After weeks of legal battles, the restraining order against Arnold was finally in place, and Barbara finally got her long-awaited divorce and freedom. The restaurant had not only survived but flourished, becoming a symbol of resilience and community spirit. The final hurdle was behind us, and it was time to focus on the future. One morning, as the sun's first rays filtered through the windows, I gathered the staff for an announcement. Barbara stood beside me, her presence a testament to the journey we had all shared. "Everyone," I began, my voice carrying a mix of excitement and gratitude. "We've been through a lot together, but today I want to share some wonderful news. With the help of Michael Carter and our other investors, we're not just keeping the Bay of Happiness alive, we're expanding. We plan to open a second location downtown." The room erupted in cheers and applause. The energy was infectious, and I saw the same spark in Barbara's eyes that I felt in my own heart. Barbara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I can't thank you all enough for your hard work and dedication. This place wouldn't be what it is today without each and every one of you. Let's make the new location just as special." As the staff dispersed to prepare for the day's service, Michael approached us with a smile. "I knew you two could pull it off. The investors are thrilled with the progress, and I have no doubt the new location will be just as successful." Barbara and I exchanged a glance, our determination renewed. "Thank you, Michael," I said. "We couldn't have done it without your support." Barbara nodded in agreement. "Absolutely, and thank you for believing in us." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Plans for the new location were drawn up, and a team of designers was brought in to create a space that mirrored the warmth and charm of the original Bay of Happiness. Barbara and I worked closely with them, ensuring every detail was perfect. One evening, after a long day of planning, Barbara and I sat down in the now empty dining room. The soft hum of the city outside was a comforting backdrop as we enjoyed a quiet moment together. "You know," Barbara said, her voice thoughtful, "I never imagined my life would turn out this way. From being homeless to becoming the head chef of a thriving restaurant, it's like a dream." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "You've earned it, Barbara. Your talent and dedication have brought this place back to life, and I couldn't have done it without you." She smiled, a mixture of pride and gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Mervyn, for everything, for giving Lisbeth and me a chance when we needed it most." "Speaking of Lisbeth," I said, "how's she doing with all the changes?" Barbara's face lit up at the mention of her daughter. "She's thriving. She loves spending time at the restaurant, and she's made so many new friends. This place feels like home to her." The warmth in her voice made my heart swell. "I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad you both feel at home here." As we sat there, enjoying the quiet camaraderie, I felt a surge of emotion. This was more than just a restaurant. It was a family, a community, and I wanted to make sure Barbara knew just how much she meant to me. "Barbara," I began, my voice tinged with nervousness, "there's something I want to ask you." She looked at me, curiosity and affection in her eyes. "What is it, Mervyn?" I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "These past months have been incredible. Despite all the challenges, we've built something amazing together, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Her eyes widened in surprise and then softened with emotion. "Mervyn." I stood up, moving around the table to kneel in front of her. "Barbara, will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, her smile radiant. "Yes, Mervyn, yes, I will." The joy that filled the room was palpable. I stood, pulling her into my arms, and we shared a tender kiss, the promise of a bright future ahead of us. Our engagement was met with overwhelming support from our staff and community. The news spread quickly, adding another layer of excitement to the preparations for the new location. We decided to have a small, intimate wedding in the newly renovated dining room of the Bay of Happiness, surrounded by those who had become like family to us. The day of the wedding arrived, and the restaurant was transformed into a fairy tale setting. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and flowers adorned every surface. Lisbeth, dressed in a beautiful white dress, served as our flower girl, her happiness infectious. As Barbara walked down the aisle, her beauty took my breath away. The ceremony was filled with love and laughter, and when we exchanged our vows, I knew this was the beginning of a wonderful new chapter in our lives. Later, as we celebrated with our friends and family, Michael pulled me aside. "You know, Mervyn, this place has become something truly special. And with you and Barbara at the helm, I have no doubt it will continue to thrive." "Thank you, Michael," I said, gratitude filling my heart, "for everything. We couldn't have done it without you." He smiled, clinking his glass against mine, "To new beginnings." As the night wore on, Barbara and I shared a dance, the world around us fading into the background. This was our moment, the culmination of months of hard work, perseverance, and love.